Ben, what's up, man? Welcome to the Dad Edge, my friend.
How's it going? Thank you so much for having me.
You bet, you bet. So I see that for those of you guys who are watching on YouTube, I see that you're outside, and this is
Yeah,
kind of crazy, man. You're actually the second musician that I've interviewed that we've done the interview where he was outside.
it's drummers. They're the problem. If they're in the drum kit anywhere, they are there hitting it, and it's like, and he'll get mad too because we'll be like, "Can you shut the hell up, man? We're trying to talk and figure some stuff out." And he's like, "Guitarists are always noodling around." It's like, dude, there's a massive difference between a guitar playing quietly and a drum kit just bashing and echoing through the halls. But I think at this point, it's just, I mean, our drummer's a bit of a Neanderthal. He's just in there way, having a good old time. I didn't want to ruin his good time.
That's mighty generous of you, man. It's funny. Russell Dickerson was the guy that I was talking about. He's in the country music space, and the reason he was outside was because his newborn was just screaming off the top of his lungs. He's like, "I'm just gonna do this outside because it's really crazy loud in my house right now."
Dude, I've been so lucky with my kids. I've got 4 kids, and none of them were screaming newborns. None of them at all. In fact, the screaming has come later on. My 2-year-old, he screams, and it's not to cry. It's because he's got 2 older siblings who already can talk and do everything. So he's figured out that he needs to get attention away from them. So he just screams. Just it doesn't matter what he's doing. If he's watching TV, if he's hungry, if he's walking, I'm like, okay, all right. This is what happens when you get four newborns that don't scream. One of them figures out lost time.
I gotta thank you, man. You just normalized my experience because my youngest boy, he's 6, but like literally, he's got 3 older brothers that just completely and totally overpower him. And of course, me and my wife. So like literally what he'll do at the dinner table, he literally just did this on Mother's Day a couple days ago. We were outside playing and like he literally just stood outside and screamed at the top of his lungs. And we were like, dude, what are you doing? He was just like, I just want to make sure you could all hear me.
Yeah, fantastic technique. It works.
It does. It does work.
It works. Why are you screaming? You're talking to me.
Right. Oh my God. So 4 kids. Did you ever think that you were gonna have 4? I mean, was this in the plans?
I always wanted to be a dad from a very, very young age. I'm so close with my family. I grew up as an expat, so I'm obviously English, but at the age of between 4 and 5, me and my family moved to Dubai. This is back in the early 90s. Dubai wasn't what everyone thinks of now when they think of Dubai. It was still very much just a desert, one main road. You could see one skyscraper at this end, and all the way at the other end of Dubai was a Hard Rock Cafe you could see. So it was very small. And so I think growing up as an expat, you just become very close with your immediate family because you're kind of all in this vulnerable position together where we packed our bags and we moved across from England to Dubai. We didn't know anyone. There were no grandparents around. So we just became very, very close. And so, I loved my mom so much. And I was like, man, I want this. I want this. I want to have my own family that feels the way about me that I feel about my parents and create these memories that I created with my parents and my kids. So it was always something I wanted. As far as having 4 kids, I had never really thought about it. I have one sibling, so there was just the 2 of us growing up. But my dad, he was adopted, and so he ended up having 4 siblings. So having a big family was always something that I thought would be nice, and it is. Everyone goes, "Wow, 4 kids, that's a lot," but it's not. It doesn't feel like a lot to me. It feels perfect. Christmas is chaotic, and I think it should be chaotic. And birthdays is just so many people, and I think that I like it.
Man,
So
that is so cool. I can't even tell you, how many people I've interviewed, and usually the majority of people come in, talking about like some good things, right? But I've also heard some traumatic things, right? And there's something really cool that you shared about this move and how it brought you guys together as a family. I want to dive in just a little bit more on that because especially, I mean, if you're moving, across, like 30 miles, right, from where you used to live. That's a pretty tough move. Moving, different states, different country, like
Yeah.
you don't even know the culture and all that. I mean, that could like just increase so much stress and so much
Oh yeah.
uncertainty that it will decimate relationships. But it sounds like for you guys, this really brought you guys together. So looking back on that move and how you guys came together, what were some things that you remember growing up that you guys did as a family that brought you together?
It's funny that you bring up the stress factor, because I was obviously too young to really even know what stress was. But I think for my parents, it did exactly what you said, and it ruined their relationship. My parents ended up getting divorced when I was about 12. But I maintained a very strong and healthy relationship with both of them. There were never arguments over who got the kids or anything. My parents would be civil. My dad would still come to dinner with my mom and my stepdad. We'd still have Christmases and stuff together. So, but I think the move, like you said, it must have been very stressful. My parents. I know we didn't have a lot of money. I know we moved there, and it's hot, right? We're in the desert, and we couldn't really afford a nice house, so we would sleep on the floor because it was marble floor, and that would be cool. And my dad would get buckets of ice and a fan and blow it onto the buckets of ice to keep us all cool. So the stress thing, it must have been there for them. But as a kid, I wasn't stressed. I just thought, this is what life is like. And I think being in those tough situations is what actually made us so close and such a tight knit family. We were going through, obviously, it was a tough time for my parents, and so we kind of just all lent on each other, even though we were only young. And it remained that way all throughout. I left home when I was 16, turning 17. I left home quite young to pursue music, but I still talk to my mom probably 3, maybe 4 times a day. We spend a lot of time on FaceTime, and she'll, even at home, she'll call my kids on FaceTime, and they'll just prop her up in the kitchen and get on about their day. But she's there. She's part of their day, even if they're not conversing, and they'll run back over and be like, "Oh, hi, Grandma, look what I've just done," and then run away again, and my mom will be cooking. Like, oh, so and I do think that those initial struggles of moving overseas and being alone and learning about a new culture, and I think that's what made us so close and connected. And that's just it's carried on through for me and my family values and raising my kids and having a relationship with my wife. I saw how difficult it is for parents to raise kids in a situation where there isn't a lot of money, and so it's always on my mind to be mindful and thankful for what we do have. And I think the most important thing that I took away from it is, as long as you've got each other, you're in pretty good shape.
And that's an incredible lesson to learn. It's at such even an early age. And I love how your mom is still a part of your life. And here's the other cool thing. Not only do you speak to her like 3 or 4 times a day, but I just love this. I'm envisioning your kids like just, being kids, just in your house, just doing their thing. And then your mom on FaceTime,
Yeah.
who is a part of it and just gets to experience. Like I think about this now, and you and I, we were talking before we even hit record, and we were talking about like how loud the house can be with 4 kids. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, man. And one thing I can tell you, and I'm sure you probably experienced this on tour. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, because you've got a savage drummer that's always with you. But the one thing that I noticed, like right now, even as we're recording this podcast, like there's nobody in my house but me. And the one thing I've noticed is that silence is deafening a lot.
It's loud. It's the loudest sound, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
I like the it's funny because we've not been on tour much because of the pandemic. This is only our second tour back since everything happened with the pandemic. And I'm sharing a room with our bass player, and I'm laying there in bed, and it's just so quiet, and he's trying to sleep, and it's pitch black, and I'm like, "Dude," and he's like, "Yeah, what's up?" And I'm like, "Do you mind if I put Disney Channel on?" He was like, "What?" And I was like, "Can I just put Disney Channel on?" He was like, "Okay." And I had to have the Disney Channel on, and it was like that familiar, theme tunes to songs my kids watch and stuff. That was enough to make me feel comfortable and go to sleep. But the silence was just, yeah, it was deafening. And that's really, I think, when I start getting very homesick when I'm away from my family, is when it's quiet. I notice that it's quiet. Whereas in my house, when it's loud, I'm sure people come in and they notice that it's loud. I don't notice that it's loud when I'm at home. It's normal.
I don't either. In fact, you're exactly right. You nailed it. The silence is the abnormal thing. It feels eerie. One time, so we have a minivan and a car. My car seats 5, minivan obviously more than that, but our minivan was in the shop, and we were supposed to go to my mother-in-law's for dinner. And my wife looked at me and she's like, "Hey, we don't have the minivan, so I can only fit 5 people in your car. So you get to stay home, and I'm taking the kids. And so just enjoy your time. Enjoy you catch up on a show or read a book or do whatever you want to do. Like, just enjoy your time." And dude, I was just like, yes. I was like, this is gonna be awesome. I popped on TV and I was like going through Netflix and Prime and all this stuff, and I was like, I don't recognize any of these shows. Like, I don't
Yeah,
recognize anything. And then like I was like, well, maybe I'll read or maybe I'll do this. And I noticed what was cool was like having my own time was cool for about 20 minutes. And
right.
then it just felt freaking weird, man. And I started having these realizations. I know you have 4 kids under 5, and I've got 4 under, 16, 14, 8, and 6. And I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, there's going to be a day that is not going to feel very long from now where
Yeah.
this will be my reality. And that, I got to be honest, man, kind of scared the shit out of me a little bit.
The scariest thing for me, but I think about that all the time. It's funny because my daughter, my oldest, she is only 5. So it feels like everyone's like, "You've got ages," and I'm like, "Hang on, I have possibly maybe 10 years left until she's 16 and she could leave." And I'm like, well, I've already done a third of that time, and it's happened like that. And it is scary. And I always get scared too that, you hear of people that become estranged from their parents, or like, I even think about myself. I'm still an expat. I live in America now, and I'm British. So my family's all in England. My mom's in England, my stepdad, my dad, my sister, they're all over there. And I think about it all the time. Like, oh my God, I hope my kids don't do to me what I've done to my parents. I can't even imagine if one of my kids goes, "I'm moving to Australia" or something. I'll be heartbroken. I'll be devastated. I'm like, well, I'm going to have to buy a house in Australia, and I'm going to have to bounce back and forth. You know what I mean? Like, it's a sad thing, but especially nowadays, it's more common to move away. And I think about it all the time. I think it's a very Western thing. It's kind of ingrained in Western culture at this point that you grow up and you leave home. And growing up in the Middle East, I grew up seeing the opposite. Family sticks together in a lot of cultures and countries around the world. The grandma lives in the house with her kids who are adults, and their kids are in the house, and they help each other, and they stay a unit, and they cook for each other. And I think that's so nice. And it's become kind of ingrained in our culture to do the opposite. You grow up and you go, "I'm out of here. I'm going to be my own person." And it's a sad, strange reality that I think we found ourselves in. But I think that could be one good thing about all this inflation and the crazy housing market is maybe people can't afford to leave anymore. It's like, you're staying with dad.
That's true, man. We're definitely in this realm right now where it's too expensive to probably move out. But I want to get back to I want to get to this point in your life, leaving home at 16 to pursue music. I mean, so going, before 16 years old, when did you start picking up music? How old were you?
I was like 2. Um, my dad's a blues musician, not by profession. He played the blues harp and had a huge passion for it growing up. My grandma played piano, and my mum's uncle is a famous brass band conductor from the UK from a long time ago. His name was Harry Mortimer, and so I think it was just always kind of in me to want to at least explore music, whether it was as a profession or not. But my mom's got pictures of me when I'm like 2 years old, stood in front of a television with my granddad's old wooden tennis racket and a piece of string, and I'm watching Grease, and she's just got pictures of me watching Grease with a tennis racket as a guitar. So she was like, "This kid's gonna be a musician." And it was I never had any sort of plan B or desire to do anything else. I just always wanted to do music, and I've found myself in the position now as I've gotten older where I love making music, writing music. I love playing shows, but the thing that I've spent my whole life dedicated to, and the thing that I loved more than anything in the world, is now the thing that's taken me away from my wife and kids. So it's become kind of like a double-edged sword for me, where I love the process of writing, recording, releasing, and I love the show, but everything that goes around it, like touring, being away, it's tough, and it's become something that, it's funny, I've dedicated my whole life to it, and now all I want to do is stay home and be a dad and a husband.
When you're on tour, what are the things you miss the most? I know as we're recording this particular podcast, you're about ready to leave for tour. And what are some of the things that you appreciate the most when you're gone?
It's funny, because I'll talk to my wife, and bless her, she's at home on her own with 4 kids. It's hard. It's a lot of work, and like we discussed, my oldest is 5, down to a 7-month-old. So, and she works too. She's an interior designer, so she's busy working too. And I think what I notice is, like, if she'll get upset with the kids because they're screaming in the background and not listening because they act up when I leave too, because they're sad. She'll get stressed out, and she'll be like, okay, no TV, off to bed, blah, 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 whatever. And then I'm always like, babe, I would give anything to be home listening to that noise right now. And you kind of forget when you're in it, and you are trying to work. She's trying to work at home, and it's stressful. It's easy to sort of get stressed by it. But I notice that when I'm away, I'm like, man, I'd give anything to listen to Faye and Finn wrestling upstairs and arguing over the remote control. Even things that can be considered an annoyance to me are things that I miss. Having that noise around, having that situation where I have to go and help them with something or stop them from arguing, just being a father figure, and that's I think what I miss the most, being present.
You know what's incredible is I just got to see a very intentional trait as you went through that entire reflection on the things that you miss and the things that obviously you're following your dream, with music and doing the thing that you've always wanted to do. And you're also realizing that there's a bit of a cost to it, right? But here's what I realized as you were talking about this, and I have the same gift you do, is you were able to not one time get distracted or get thrown off your game by that beeping truck that was behind you. You just kept going, which I think is a gift. If you're raising like a house full of high energy kids, you can just be like, yeah, it's just background noise. Like I can still think clearly.
Yeah. I didn't even notice there was that noise. And then my brain went, yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah. It's just background noise. What is it, going back to that reflection, obviously you can tell you love what you do when you perform, when you write, you're in that creative space. I definitely get the sense that there is not one part of you that probably regrets making the decision to enter into music, because you're doing the work that makes you come alive. You're doing the thing that you've always dreamed of doing. And here's the other thing too, while there's a cost to that, right? You're on tour. What I get the sense that when you are home, like, dude, you're in it.
I'm there, yeah. Which is, I had this discussion with friends of mine that get to stay home and work a 9 to 5. And I actually think, even though I leave for months at a time, I do see more of my kids than they get to. They've told me, like, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get ready for work, and I'm out the door by 6, so I don't get to say good morning to my kid. And then when I get home from work, it's normally 6:30, 7 o'clock. My kid's in bed or about to go to bed. And that's the cycle. It's like, well, I'll see you at the weekend, And so for me, when I am home, I'm there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for months and months at a time. This pandemic has obviously been really tough for everyone. But for me, it was a really enjoyable period, because I got to spend 2 uninterrupted years with my kids, and I got to watch them grow and learn and become tiny humans, and we've created a bond that I think is really quite special because of that. You know, I think a lot of my friends obviously love their kids to the ends of the world and back, but I think I have a different bond with my kids than a lot of my other friends have, simply because I've been able to spend so much time with them. And I've, even when I'm working and writing music now, my kids are a part of it. They'll come in, and I know by their reaction if what I'm writing is good, because they're not trying to please me and go, yeah, that's good. They'll either be enjoying it, and that's shown by them being behind me on the couch, jumping up and down, listening, or Finn, my son, he'll be like head banging if he's enjoying it. And if they don't like it, they leave. They don't say, I don't like it. They just, and they go and do something else that's more interesting and enjoyable to them. So I've been able to like bring my kids into this world that I love, and now they're very much falling in love with music too, which is really it's quite special for me to see.
Man, that is so cool. Yeah, kids, they won't, especially at that age, like they're just going to be brutally honest, right?
Yeah, I sat there thinking, oh well, what's the diplomatic answer here? I need to make sure Dad's feelings aren't hurt.
Right.
I'm gonna go play with some Lego. This isn't for me.
This is terrible.
Yeah, and then he's like, delete.
Yeah.
Start again.
That is classic, man. That is classic stuff. I'm writing a book right now, and it's going to launch on September 6th. And we're writing this process now of creating the cover. And I will tell you, man, there's no greater critic and honest critic than your kids. And they know you pretty well, right? So I've shown the cover designs of my kids, and they're like, yeah, that sucks. Or
What's
like,
the
no.
book? The book. What's it about?
So the book is going to be called The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood. And
Why don't you have one of them draw it? They have your kids draw it, and it would look like a kid's drawn it. It would be so cool.
I have never thought of that. That's a hell of an idea, my friend.
Yeah.
Where do I send the check to for you? So
I'll buy the book.
That's a great idea, man. I bet their creative juices could do better than my publisher. So that's good stuff, man. Switching gears.
Like part of it.
What's that?
It would look like your kids were part of the book, which is the point.
You're dead on. You're dead on, that would be a cool thing, man. You really got me thinking about that now. That would be a really, really cool thing. Like give them each away, be like, hey, each one of you 4 boys get an opportunity to give me your best cover design of what you think this should look like. And we'll take it from there. So I think that's a great idea.
White, and it's got 4 squares. Here you go. Here's your spot. Here's yours. Here's yours. And then you just scroll the writing across it.
Oh, I love it, man. That's a great idea, man. I love it. I want to switch gears to raising boys and girls. So I know you have 1 of each. I'm sorry, 2 of each. You have 2 boys, 2 girls. And I'm curious, I always like to ask men this question who have 1 of each, or maybe they have all of 1 or whatever, but what are some noticeable differences that you've realized raising your daughters and raising your sons?
I think there are huge fundamental differences between boys and girls, other than the obvious physical attributes, but it's not things that people really think about. Like for me, like if my wife's gone to get her nails done, my daughter has started going. She's 5 and she loves it. She gets her nails done. And then my son, my oldest son, Finn, who's 4, he sees them come home with these pretty nails and everything. And he's like, well, I want my nails doing. So, he'll get his nails painted and stuff. And some people are like, why are you letting your son get his nails painted? That's for girls. And I'm like, clearly it's not, because that's not how kids think. But so things like that, and clothes, like my daughter sometimes will be like, oh, I want to wear what Finn's wearing, and she'll put on some dinosaur shorts and a dinosaur t-shirt, and it's like, well, those clothes are for boys. And it's like, that's not where these kids' differences lie. They don't think about that stuff, and nor should we. I think the things that are different are just their general overall behavioral behavioral traits. I've noticed, for instance, my sons will climb on a table, they'll fall off the table and hurt themselves, they'll cry, and I'm like, well, what have we learned? And the answer is always nothing. They get back on the table and they fall off the table and hurt themselves again. My daughter will get on a table, fall off and hurt herself, and be like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not, that's dangerous. And it's all, I don't want to say they're smarter, but definitely I've noticed that my daughter my youngest daughter's too young she's 7 months old, so I can't really gauge. But for my oldest daughter, I noticed she's definitely more cautious. She definitely thinks longer and harder about things than either of my sons will. They're kind of just full on energy, go, go, go. She's more reserved, thinks things through. She's quietly assessing the situation before making a decision. And it's things like that I find interesting. And I do see real like maternal instincts, even in a 5-year-old, like if her brother's going towards something in the yard that she deems is dangerous, she'll yell, "Fad, stop!" and she'll call for us, and she'll run over and stop him. So, I think those are the kinds of differences I'm really noticing. It's not the nail painting and this is for girls, this is for boys, and sports are for boys, and pink unicorns for girls. That's not the stuff. They're all enjoying everything like that together growing up. But it's just the way that they act and take things in and navigate life, even at this young age, is vastly different.
That's fascinating. I don't think I've ever heard of that, but I guarantee that, I mean, that is just dead accurate. Like I see my boys do the same things that your boys do, which just, they do the thing, climb up on the table, get hurt, all that, and they just do it all over again.
Yeah.
And girls much more cautious, probably much more cerebral. They're thinking things through, they're learning, that kind of thing.
I don't want to hurt myself.
Yeah.
Good.
What about how you approach, what's most meaningful for you to raise a strong, confident young man? And also, what is most meaningful for you to raise a strong, confident young woman?
I try and I think happiness really is the key, and I try not to force things onto any of my kids, like when Faye was a little girl, everyone was like, oh, you should put her in ballerina school. She looks so cute in a tutu and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, maybe she doesn't want to go to ballerina school. And people put it on her and were like, wouldn't you like to do ballerina school? So she's like, yeah. So I put her in ballerina school and she didn't enjoy it. Now she plays soccer and she loves it, So I think for me, I think raising happy kids is the ultimate goal to raising a good person. I think if they can be happy and not just be happy within themselves, but create happiness around them for everyone else to enjoy. And I think that's what's most important to me, And I think I always try and teach them that whatever you're doing, make sure you're happy, make sure you're enjoying it. Don't do things that you don't enjoy. Don't do things that other people say you should do, because it doesn't matter. This is for you. And obviously I don't mean things like kids don't want to go to school. Sure. I'm not saying you sit home because you don't enjoy school. There are things that you do, but find the joy in it. Find what brings you joy when you're at school. What subjects are you enjoying more than others? What things pique your interest? What things make you smile? Is it creating relationships? Is it playing sports? Is it maths? Whatever it is, find some joy in what you're doing. And I think that's when you're going to raise a thoughtful, mindful human being, whether it's a boy or a girl. And I think that's important. I think a lot of kids are kind of pushed into doing things they don't necessarily want to do because they're told, well, that's what you do. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know that have young boys, baby boys, and they're already going, oh man, he's going to be the star of the football team, or he's going to be this, and we're going to do baseball. I mean, it's like, well, these are your joys. How do you know this is your child's joy? And I see a lot of people sort of forcing things upon upon members. And obviously that's kind of natural. Like if you have an interest, you want there to be a shared interest because you want to, that's a bonding thing, you know, so there's the hope there, just like with me with music. So I've noticed that they enjoy it. So I'm encouraging them to be with me when I'm writing music, and I love that time. But maybe they won't enjoy music with dad in a couple of years or whatever. And that's fine too, you know?
I love how you are very open for these kids to pave their own way and find the joy that brings them to life. You know, like, and I mentioned the term or the statement earlier, you know, do the work that makes you come alive. And that's exactly what you get to do with your music. And the cool thing that you're doing is that you're encouraging your kids to do the same. I mean, I'm a little bit ahead of you in parenting, and I can't even tell you like how many times I've seen, you know, a little boy, not so much girls because I don't have the girls, but like a little boy at, you know, playing baseball or playing soccer or football or whatever, and you know that they just hate every single minute of it, and their dad or mom or whoever wants them to just love that sport so much because that's what they did growing up, and they're so
Yeah.
they really want like that legacy, you know, to see their kid flourish in that. And at the end of the day, it's like, man, this I don't really like this. You know, I've
Yeah.
had
I it happens a lot, and it happens in so many different aspects. Like I think as parents and even educators, our job is to sort of nurture and nourish um, the things in these kids that they are passionate about, that they're good at, help them flourish, help them become a person. Don't try and force them down a path that society says they should go down. And I got into a bit of an argument with my kids' previous um, preschool because they had this thing on Friday where it was like a religious education thing, and we put them in a school. It wasn't a Christian school or anything, and so there was no mention of this. And I said to them, I was like, my kids are coming home now at 4 and 5 years old, and they're asking me about Jesus Christ and God, and they're telling me, you know, God created me, and I'm sat there going, okay, well, this is awkward because I'm not religious, you know, I'm not against religion by any means. And so I went into the school and I expressed this to them, and I said, look, I understand that, you know, you're religious and I'm not against that, but growing up in the Middle East, I got to experience, you know, Muslims, Christians, Buddhism. I got to see all of it. And in my mind, if my kids are going to find religion one day, which is perfectly fine, I think they should find it in their own way, and it should be whatever religion speaks to them, if any, and they need to make that decision and build that relationship with whatever it is they believe in. I don't think you should be force feeding it down my 4-year-old's throat because he's coming home now and telling me that he was created by God. And when I try to explain to him, well, actually, you know, but there's a possibility that could be real, but we don't really know, and maybe there's other stuff out there. He's adamant, no, that can't be true because my teacher told me this. And so I think outside of parenting, teachers have a huge responsibility too, because kids do look up to them and take their word, you know, forgive the pun almost, but as gospel, you know, and it's a big responsibility raising a child as a parent or a teacher or anyone that's around them. And I think it's super important to be as open-minded as you can to all different ideas and people and hobbies, everything. You know, I think it's important to keep that in mind. But it's hard, isn't it, really? Because there's so many different opinions and people around there. It's hard to sort of navigate your way through everything and still have your child be understanding of all these different ideas, especially when they're so young.
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting that you had that experience growing up because there's, especially I would say over here in the States, right? There's not a whole lot of exposure to
Mm.
how the environment that you grew up in, right? Which is like, man, I got to see like a variety of different beliefs and a variety of different things. And most of us just we don't grow up being exposed to stuff like that. So it's an interesting take on what you're saying.
Yeah, you know, and I just think what I did learn in those experiences is, my friends over here who are Muslim are also friends with these people who are Christians, who are also friends with these people who are agnostic, and these people here who are, you know, are into Buddhism, and I've know people are people at the end of the day. And that's something that I try and remember walking through life too, is it doesn't really matter what your religious beliefs or your, uh, sexual orientation or your job description. It doesn't, none of that matters. It's just part of who you are, as at your core. And that's really what matters. Who are you at your core? What are your human values? Where do those lie? And I think that's really where our compasses should be pointing.
Yeah, it's an interesting take for sure. And it's I know over here in the States, and especially when it comes to anything like, faith based. I mean, I'm a faith based person. Sometimes
Yeah,
you're walking on like a really slippery slope with some people and their opinions, because they'll, we talk about religion like we talk about politics, or like we talk about COVID or whatever. It could be a very triggering topic for some. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting take, especially how you grew up, because you got to see different things that probably the rest of us didn't.
I
Just
do with the why is it I'm getting beaten up by a tree. Why is it like you just said, triggering? Because it's a very personal thing, religion, isn't it? And so I just find it funny that it can upset people to such an extent, either side of the fence. What someone else is choosing to do or believe, um, it's funny, isn't it, that people can't always be accepting of things that don't align with their thought process.
Yeah, it's I think that's with a lot of different things. Like my wife and I were joking not too long ago, that in the workplace, right? There's always been rules that you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about sex, and you don't talk about race, right? And the interesting thing, once COVID came around, well, now we can't talk about COVID and we can't talk about being vaccinated, because that's now a triggering topic, because people identify
Right.
with like, I'm either vaccinated or I'm not. And there's different meanings, positive and negative, depending on what you believe, behind both of those things. And I think one
Right.
of the reasons people are they get so amped up on that is because there's a part of their identity that maybe if they're not aligned with someone that they're talking to or whatever, that it feels threatening,
Mm.
to both sides, and they'll go on the defense. I think that's what a lot of us see, is that we just go on the defense because it's a part of how we grew up, or maybe it's something that we believe, or something that we're operating within. And I think that's why it's so triggering for people.
We've almost been pitted against each other as humans, haven't we? It's like we must find like-minded people and stick with our like-minded people. It's a very strange thing, because, like you said, if none of these topics were ever brought up and you didn't know, you could be best friends with this person.
Hey, you'd have no idea.
Yeah, you'd have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah, you'd have no idea. That's very true. I want to switch gears just a little bit. I know you've been with your wife now for 7 years, and you come across to me, and everything I've seen on social and that kind of thing, is you just come across to me as a person who truly just loves his wife, and loves being married, and you really honor her in such a way. I'm curious, is how do you keep your relationship with her on point, especially with travel and that kind of thing that can be straining on a relationship, and 4 kids and that kind of thing. But how do you guys find time to and ways to elevate the marriage?
I think first and foremost, you always have to try and learn. For me, I like to learn something every single day. And
Awesome.
one of the big lessons that I've learned in my life is I was actually previously married, to another woman when I was young, quite a lot younger, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. And I think having this stressful lifestyle and being away and being too young at the time, just took its toll on that. So I had to learn not to, some people would be put off of marriage after that, but I love being married, and I love my wife more than anything. And so it never put me off, but I had to carry into my new relationship the lessons I had learned in my previous one. And something that I always have to bear in mind is, so for instance, you obviously love your kids more than anything, and it's so tempting when I get home to run out to my kids and give them a big hug and a kiss, like, I've missed you, but I have to go, hang on a minute. My wife gets the first hug and the first kiss. It's important that she knows she's not second best to the kids. It's important that she knows now that we have a family, she's not taking a backseat. And, I think in my previous marriage, unfortunately, my wife at the time probably did take the backseat far too often to my career. And that's just something that I've had to learn growing older and growing up, and implement that into my marriage now. Is, she needs to feel loved too. She needs to feel like, I never want her to wake up and go, is he with me because we've got kids together? Would he still be here if we didn't? Because the answer is yes, I would still be here. And she needs to feel that way. And I think it's easy to let kids come in between a relationship, not intentionally. They're not there to drive a wedge between you, but of course your time is torn with raising a family and these kids. So it's important for me to make sure she knows she's loved and respected and wanted and needed here. And so even small things, like, it's hard to do it, but we try, and we don't manage every week. Obviously, some weeks just too many things come up, but we try to go out for a date night every single week. We try and go out every Friday, even if it's like, okay, we don't have time to go to dinner this week, let's go get coffee, or let's do something where it's just the two of us. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes it's truly is too busy. So this week, maybe it's, okay, well, we're going to leave all 4 of the kids at home with my mother-in-law, with her mum, and we're just going to go and do the shopping together, just the two of us. You have to carve out time to where it's just the two of you, and just appreciate each other. Take time to ask about her day. I always ask how work is. I always ask how, I'll wake up and ask her how she slept, even though I know how she slept right next to me. If she was tossing and turning, I know, or if she'd sound asleep, I know, but it's important to ask, how did you sleep? How are you doing today? I think it's important to make each other feel desired, loved, respected, heard.
I think that's so important, and I think you're so dead on with with all of your reflections. One in particular, to where I can't even tell you how many men I've worked with over the years of their marriage has taken a toll and a beating because they have been a parent first and married second. And what I always tell guys, and sometimes it's a popular opinion with some people and sometimes it's not, and that is, you're married first and you're a parent second. Because the way that, and it sounds like you guys feel the exact same way about your relationship, the way Jessica and I feel about our relationship is we're the foundation of this house. And if the foundation of this house is a foundation that's like a house of cards, well, guess what? The whole family is going to suffer and it's going to come crashing down. So, I'm the same as you. She is my first priority. I am her first priority. Now, of course, the kids are like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, like right underneath of that, right? And of course, if there's an urgent matter or there's an issue or somebody needs something, of course, we're going to attend to that. But when it comes to exactly what you said, the investment of time, my wife and I call it, we need time to not be mom and dad. We need time to be a couple, right? And sometimes it's just an hour a week. I take off, and today's Wednesday as we're recording, I take off a half a day every single Wednesday so we can go out and just have a couple hours together, whether we go hiking, whether we work out, whether we, go get lunch somewhere, whether we get a coffee somewhere, something. And I got to tell you, and I'll be very honest with you, over the past 16 weeks, my 14-year-old and I were getting ready for this big competitive event. And my date days with her took a bit of a back seat because I was getting ready for that event with him. So there's a lot of time that went into that. Plus I was writing this book, and our date nights kind of took a bit of a back seat. And we were talking just the other night, and I was like, man, I think it's been like a month. And that's like a record long time for us. Like, we just don't go that long ever. And
I mean, life, doesn't it? It can do very easily, especially with 4 kids. That's what makes it difficult, isn't it? You are trying to divide your time between, your time is now divided between 5 people. Like, it's a tall order. And that doesn't even include your work, your book,
right.
These conversations. That's more of your time that you have to find and carve out, man. So, it's easy I think for that to happen. It's easy for a month to slip by and you haven't even realized it's been a month until it's been a month, and you're like, oh, yeah. God,
You're like,
you know.
okay.
Yeah, that's why I said, even like going shopping, it's like we need groceries. This is the only time we have this week, which sucks, but at least let's go get groceries together, and we can talk, on aisle 3 about how work's going, and by the time you get to aisle 5, you're talking about next week's date night, and you're excited about that. So always find time.
Yeah, man, I love that message. Just switching gears as we wrap up here, because I want to make sure that people know about your tour and all that. But I want to give the audience a side of Ben that they may or may not know. And what I mean by that is, I think when you are a celebrity or you're in the limelight or you're an influencer or whatever, the people that are following you, the people that are listening to you, the people that um, watch you from afar, they perceive you in such a way of like, oh, Ben is this. I talked to John Cooper about this with Skillet, and I asked him the same question, and a few things just came back that were super refreshing. I'm like, if you could let any of your fans know like who John Cooper is and what he's all about, and just something like your fans, you probably know how your fans sort of view you, but like, what would you want to tell your fans that you think that they don't know about you, that you think would be meaningful to them?
It's so funny because it's not really an answer to your question, but in a roundabout way it is, because my mum has always said this to me, and she says it frequently. Like, for instance, last time I got to travel back to England to visit was unfortunately before the pandemic. And I got to town, and we went out. Where did we go? We went to go buy some dog food for my sister's dog. And we're in the pet store, and the woman that we're paying, checking out, she freaks out that I'm in the store. And then the next morning we wake up, and in the local newspaper it says Rockstar comes through Yeovil. And my mom's reading it, and she always says the same thing whenever anything like that happens. And even if something hasn't happened, she just likes to remind me. She goes, to me, you're always going to be just Ben. You're never, ever going to be more than just Ben to me. And there is nothing more important or better than just being Ben. She was like, I'll view you as a rock star. I'll never view you as any of that. I understand you are to some people, and I understand, and I'm proud of the success you've had, but you'll never be anything other than Ben to me, no matter what. And I try and carry that message with me. I never want to be a rock star in the eyes of, really anyone, but especially people in my world. I never want to feel like I'm cooler or doing better or anything because of what I'm so fortunate to be doing. I always wake up and I try and just be Ben. I think that's the only thing that's important. And I've noticed it's starting to carry through even on stage. You used to go on stage, you play a rock show, and you're saluting and you're doing what you do on stage. I've noticed that this over the years has turned to this. And I'm thumbs up in people, and I'm making sure, you guys good? You having a good time too? And there's kids up there with their parents. I'm like, oh yes, there's just thumbs up going everywhere. And I think that's part of just being Ben. It's important to not lose that side of who you are. Like, who are you outside of this? And I think about that every day. And that is who I am. I'm Ben. I'm just Ben.
Damn, dude, that hit me in the feels big time, because I'm sitting there and I'm visualizing my own kids, and I think I would say something I wouldn't have thought of that on my own, to be quite honest. Like, hearing that your mom told you that, I'm like, that is freaking gold, man. And I guarantee that you probably feel the same way about your 4 kids. Like, if they go on to do something like massive, right? That Finn is still going to be Finn, right?
Always will be. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I love that, man. Well, hey, I want to make sure that the audience can find you and everything you're doing. If they want to go check out tickets for your tour, your albums, like, what is the best place that people can just get more of you, more connected? And if they want to go see you in concert, where do they go do all that as well?
It's funny, man. I always just say, go on Google. I'm so out of touch with everything online now. I feel like I can't keep up. When I was a kid, MySpace came about, and it was like, that was a lot, and now there's just platform after platform. But if you're going to listen to music, I always think Spotify is a pretty safe bet, or Apple. You just type the name in, Asking Alexandria, and it's going to pop up. And yeah, tickets. How do you find concert tickets? I don't even know. Google, right?
Google, yeah, you can get them anywhere.
It's I know we have a website, but do people go on websites? Like, I don't know what people do anymore.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, we are going to have all of them in the show notes. So not to worry. I've got a whole team of people that go and find all this stuff. So listen, here's what I promise you guys. Okay.
Don't they?
What's that?
They go on Google, don't they?
Yeah, they probably go on Google, but here's what I'm going to do for you guys, just so that none of this stuff is hard to find. We're going to have all of Ben's social media handles as well as his website, also as touring information if you guys want to go check that out. All you have to do is head on over to thedadedge.com/375 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/375 for this show. Ben, dude, you are salt of the earth. You're so refreshing, just super original. And I couldn't have thought of a better way to end the show than your mom saying to me, "You're always just Ben," because you come across, I mean, you're just like an everyday guy, like raising 4 kids, married, doing his thing. And I have just thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, man.
I have too. I appreciate that, and I think it's a funny thing in our world. They'll tell you, don't be a normal guy. You need to be a rock star. You need to be unreachable. You need to be on this person. I'm like, why? What is more magic than being a parent, a partner, a husband? Like, what's more impressive and important and spectacular than that journey? I don't know why you wouldn't put that as the title to your biography. It's the best.
Man, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more, dude. This was awesome. Can't wait for this to come out. And hey, honestly, man, best of luck in your tour. I know you're gonna kick ass and take names. And seriously, I wish you nothing but fulfillment, success in the workplace, obviously with what you do with your craft, but also under your own roof in those relationships as well.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. I had a blast.
Me too, my friend. Me too. Gentlemen, like I said, head on over to thedadedge.com/375 for all the information. And above all else, go out and live legendary. Take care.